An aircraft takes off from the middle of the United States. It stays in the air for more than 30 hours straight, never needing to stop. Then, it drops bunker-busting bombs with almost perfect accuracy onto a nuclear facility buried deep under a mountain on the other side of the planet. After that, it simply turns around and heads back to base. And not a single air defense radar even knew it was there. It is not as fast as a fighter. It is not as loud or flashy as a ballistic missile. Yet this is the one aircraft that can decide the outcome of an entire war. Because when it appears in your skies, it means your key targets are about to be erased. In this episode, we will not stop at reading specifications on a screen. Instead, we're going to dissect and rank the 5 most dangerous strategic bombers on the planet today from a true strategic perspective. We're going to rate every bomber on a unified scorecard built on 6 key criteria. 1. Overall combat capability. 2. Stealth and survivability against detection. 3. Sensors and data. 4. Its combat ecosystem and coordination. 5. Upgrade potential and service life. And 6. Strategic impact. Each of these 6 categories is worth up to 5 points for a maximum total of 30. If you stay until the end of this video, you will not only see the final ranking of the 5 flying monsters that dominate our skies today, but in the final segment, we will uncover the secret of 2 candidates for the #1 spot of the future. These are next-generation bombers that the world has never seen in real combat. Watch until the very last second and decide for yourself which weapon will truly control the skies in the next showdown. Now, let us begin. Number 5. The B-1B Lancer. This is America's long-range supersonic bomber. Its swing wings can shrink down to about 24 meters when fully swept back for high speed, then stretch out to more than 41 meters when fully extended to save fuel. The fuselage is about 45 meters long, over 10 meters tall, and its maximum takeoff weight is above 200 tons. Inside are 4 F101 engines with afterburner, allowing the B-1 to go supersonic at high altitude. But most of the time, its real job is to fly just below the speed of sound at low level, slipping under radar coverage. Its combat radius reaches several thousand nautical miles. With aerial refueling, it can strike any target across the entire Middle East and still return safely to base. All of its weapons, more than 30 tons of guided bombs and missiles, roughly the weight of 15 pickup trucks, sit inside 3 internal bomb bays. Seen from a distance, the B-1 does not look as massive as the B-52 or as alien as the B-2. It looks like a scaled-up fighter. Sharp nose, long fuselage, swept wings, tall vertical tail. But the reason it earns a place in this ranking is not its looks. It is the way it changed the United States Air Force's thinking about long-range attack. Speed, low-level flight, and the ability to carry a huge load of precision weapons straight into dense air defenses. The original B-1A was a very different animal. It was designed in the Cold War to fly very high, very fast, around Mach 2, almost twice the speed of sound. and to punch through Soviet air defenses with raw speed alone. But as surface-to-air missile technology improved, this idea became less convincing. The Carter administration actually canceled the program and asked a blunt question: should we keep pouring money into a giant aircraft that is still easy for radar to see? On paper, not exactly a smart bet. Then, stealth technology, like the F-117, arrived, and the strategy shifted. Instead of a high-flying supersonic bomber, the United States needed something that could skim low over the terrain, use moderate speed, and combine that with a massive load of precision weapons. The aircraft was reborn as the B-1B. Its top speed was reduced a bit. Structural strength was increased to handle low-level flight. Payload was increased. It is not a stealth bomber like the B-2, but its radar cross-section was reduced compared to classic designs by rounding wing edges, carefully shaping the surfaces, and using some radar-absorbent materials. The swing wing is the aerodynamic heart of the B-1B. When it needs to go fast, the wings sweep back, the effective wing area shrinks, drag drops, and the bomber can dash forward at very high speed. When it needs to fly slower, save fuel, or land, the wings extend, lift increases, and its stall speed comes down. This mechanism is complex and heavy, but it allows the Lancer to be both a long-range bomber and a platform that can still approach targets with high speed when needed. Its weakness is that it no longer carries a strategic nuclear role like the B-52 or the B-2. By treaty and by political decision, nuclear capability was removed from the B-1. In return, it became one of the most flexible conventional bombers in the United States inventory, carrying a huge share of day-to-day strike missions over the last 3 decades. In its 2 large bomb bays and 1 smaller bay, the B-1B can carry almost every modern smart weapon in the book. GPS-guided JDAMs, smart cluster munitions, standoff weapons like JASM, naval mines, even special packages designed to hit many small targets in one pass. Compared with the B-52, the B-1B does not always carry a bigger total bomb load, but thanks to its internal layout and weapon management system, it can release a large number of precision weapons on many different targets in a single sortie with very high accuracy. Combat is where the B-1B proved its value. During the Second Gulf War, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, the Lancer often appeared as an airborne fire support platform. It would circle above the battlefield, listen for calls from ground troops or special forces, then drop precision-guided weapons onto hotspots. Its ability to carry many different bomb types in one mission means a single B-1B can deliver firepower comparable to an entire package of fighter aircraft, with a smaller crew and a much longer time on station. Upgrades over the years have kept the B-1B from falling behind. Communications and data links have been modernized so it can work smoothly with airborne early warning aircraft, new generation fighters, and troops on the ground. Cockpit upgrades, multifunction displays, and mission computers have been improved to handle real-time intelligence flows far better than before. Its ability to carry standoff weapons means it can stay outside the most dangerous air defenses while launching long-range cruise missiles at heavily protected targets. Of course, the B-1B has limits. Its airframe has spent many years flying at low altitude with heavy loads, which increases structural fatigue. The United States Air Force has already started retiring some airframes, focusing resources on keeping the remaining fleet in the best possible condition while waiting for the next-generation bomber to arrive. In the long run, the Lancer's service life will not stretch as far into the future as the B-52 or the B-2. In terms of image, the B-1B is not as legendary as the B-52 and not as mysterious as the B-2. It is the quiet workhorse, the bomber that appears again and again in mission logs, but rarely gets the spotlight. Maybe that is exactly why it is part of the backbone of United States bomber power. It is fast enough, tough enough, flexible enough, carries a huge load of smart weapons, and is always ready for high-tempo conventional campaigns. If we score the B-1B Lancer on the same 6-point scale in this episode, the picture looks like this. Total score, 18 out of 30. That is why the B-1B Lancer takes the number 5 spot on this list. Number 4. The Tu-95MS Bear-H. This is the latest upgraded version of the Tu-95 line. Its wings stretch more than 50 meters across, the fuselage is about 46 meters long, and it stands almost 12 meters tall. Maximum takeoff weight sits somewhere around 180 to almost 190 tons. It uses 4 Kuznetsov NK-12 turboprop engines with contra-rotating propellers, considered the most powerful turboprop engines ever mounted on an aircraft. Cruise speed is subsonic, a little over 800 kilometers per hour. Ceiling is around 12 to 13,000 meters. Range is more than 10,000 kilometers. And with aerial refueling, it can cover almost all of Europe, or a large part of the Pacific. Weapon payload is a bit over 10 tons, but that is not what makes it dangerous. What matters is the type of weapons it carries. Long-range cruise missiles, including versions with nuclear warheads. From the outside, the Tu-95MS looks like a creature that got lost on its way out of the Cold War. Straight wings, gigantic propellers spinning like crazy, and a sound so loud and so unique that NATO pilots joke they can find the bear just by taking off their headsets. It does not exactly whisper across the sky. But do not let the old school look fool you. Under that metal skin, the MSM upgrade turns it into an airborne missile carrier, a spearhead of Russia's long-range strike force. The Bear's story starts in the 1950s, when the Soviet Union needed an answer to the B-52. They wanted an aircraft that could carry nuclear bombs from Soviet territory to the American mainland without relying too much on overseas bases. Instead of following the turbofan path like the Americans, Tupolev went in the opposite direction. They built a huge propeller-driven bomber, slower but far more fuel-efficient, able to stay on patrol for a very long time. The result was the Tu-95, one of the very few military aircraft that came from your grandparents' era and is still flying, still being upgraded today. During the Cold War, Tu-95 Bear-H bombers performed long patrol flights along the edge of NATO airspace, forcing American, British, and Norwegian fighters to scramble again and again to intercept and escort them. The main mission was not deep penetration. It was a reminder that on the other side, there was always a nuclear-armed bomber force on alert. When long-range cruise missiles like the KH-55 appeared, the Tu-95 was transformed into the Tu-95MS, shifting from a pure freefall bomber into an airborne cruise missile launch platform. The Tu-95MS takes that concept one step further. Instead of designing a brand new bomber at enormous cost, Russia brings old Tu-95MS airframes back into the factory, strips out almost all the electronics, installs a new radar, new mission computers, new communications and navigation systems, and moves everything from Soviet analog standards to digital. In some programs, the NK-12 engines are upgraded to more reliable variants, with less vibration and better fuel consumption. Mechanically, the wings and airframe are checked for fatigue, stressed skin panels are replaced, and some areas are reinforced to stretch the service life by decades. But the real heart of the Tu-95MSM is its weapons. Its job now is not to charge into a wall of air defenses. It is to stay outside and fire. In the bomb bay and under the wings, the Bear can carry cruise missiles like KH-55, KH-555, and especially KH-101 and KH-102, the conventional and nuclear variants, with ranges reported to be up to several thousand kilometers. That means the aircraft can remain inside Russian airspace or over relatively safe waters and launch waves of low-flying, terrain-hugging missiles against power grids, factories, command centers, and air bases deep inside enemy territory. For modern air defense, the real target is that swarm of incoming missiles. The Bear itself is just the truck sitting far behind the front line. On the sensor and electronics side, the Tu-95MSM gets a much deeper upgrade than the original MS. The search radar is replaced with a more reliable model that works better with inertial navigation and GLONASS. Fire control systems are digitized, allowing full integration with new generation cruise missiles, more complex strike planning, and coordination of multiple aircraft in the same strike package. Strategic communications are optimized to connect with distant command centers, keeping the Bear firmly inside Russia's nuclear command and control and conventional strike networks. Even so, life inside a Tu-95MSM cockpit still looks very different from a B-2 or even a B-52. The crew is large, usually 7 people. Old-style analog gauges and digital displays sit side by side. Noise and vibration are high. It feels more like working inside an old ship than inside a clean, quiet 21st century aircraft. By modern network-centric warfare standards, the Bear is clearly not a cutting-edge sensor platform. But as a long-range missile truck, it is good enough for the job. In real combat, the Tu-95MS and its upgrades have appeared regularly. Over Syria, they launched cruise missiles against militant targets from safe distances. In the war in Ukraine, major strike waves against power and industrial infrastructure are often linked to Tu-95s taking off from bases like Engels, carrying a very clear strategic label. This is Russia's long-range strike tool, hitting real targets and sending a psychological message at the same time. Looking ahead, the MSM program aims to keep the Tu-95 in service into the 2040s and possibly beyond, operating alongside the Tu-160 and newer platforms. That makes the Bear one of the clearest examples of how a classic design can be modernized again and again to stay relevant in modern war. But when we place it next to the other bombers in this ranking, the strengths and weaknesses of the Tu-95MSM are obvious. In overall combat capability, it is extremely dangerous as a long-range cruise missile launcher. But if it is forced to push into heavily defended airspace, it is far weaker than stealth platforms. In stealth and survivability, its straight wings, huge propellers, large radar cross-section, and very loud acoustic signature mean it is absolutely not a hard aircraft to detect. In sensors and data sharing, the MSM upgrade brings it up to a minimum acceptable level for network-centric warfare, but it cannot compete with platforms that were designed from day one for that environment. On the other hand, in upgrade potential and service life, very few aircraft can match the Bear's endurance. And in strategic impact, every time a Tu-95 shows up in the news, the story is almost always about nuclear deterrence and long-range strikes. If we score the Tu-95MS Bear-H by these same criteria as the rest of this episode, it looks like this. Total score, 19 out of 30. That is why the Tu-95MS Bear-H takes the number 4 position on this list. Number 3. The Tu-160. Nicknamed the White Swan by the Russian Air Force, this is the largest supersonic swing-wing bomber ever built. With wings fully extended, it stretches more than 55 meters. Swept back for speed, that shrinks to about 35 meters. The fuselage is around 54 meters long, almost 14 meters tall, and maximum takeoff weight is over 270 tons. 4 NK-32 turbofan engines sit under the wing roots, each with more than 25 tons of thrust. That lets the Tu-160 cruise at supersonic speed and reach around Mach 2 at altitudes above 15,000 meters. Weapon payload is roughly 40 to 45 tons. Range is more than 12,000 kilometers, and with aerial refueling, it can strike targets anywhere in Europe, the Middle East, and even large parts of the Pacific, then return to Russian territory. The Tu-160 story begins in the final phase of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union realized that Tu-95s alone were not enough against America's B-1 and B-52. They wanted a bomber that could carry a massive load of weapons, then sprint at supersonic speed to missile launch points and turn back before the enemy could react. The result is a very Soviet machine. Big, heavy, muscular, using raw engine power and speed to make up for what they could not yet do in stealth. The Tu-160 airframe is a complex structure of alloy steel and titanium. The swing wing lets it take off and land like a straight-wing aircraft, then sweep back to cut drag at high speed. All 4 NK-32s are packed close together at the wing roots, with large intakes and huge exhaust nozzles, making the Tu-160 one of the loudest and easiest aircraft to recognize in the sky. Aerodynamically, it looks like a gigantic arrow. A long, sharp nose, wings folded back, a stretched fuselage, everything built for speed and range. But the real power of the Tu-160 is not in charging straight into air defenses. It is in what it carries inside. From the start, it was built as a long-range cruise missile launcher. Inside its 2 large bomb bays sit rotary launchers for KH-55, KH-555, and today KH-101 and KH-102. These are long-range cruise missiles that fly low, guided by inertial and satellite navigation, with conventional or nuclear warheads and ranges of thousands of kilometers. In that role, the Tu-160 becomes an airborne missile carrier. It does not need to punch through NATO air defenses. It just has to reach the edge of safe airspace, open the bomb bays, fire a salvo, and turn back. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the Tu-160's future was hanging by a thread. Many airframes sat in Ukraine and were cut up under disarmament deals. Russia brought a few back and kept a very small force alive. Only when oil and gas money returned and relations with the West worsened did the Tu-160 modernization program get real fuel again. Instead of simply keeping it on life support, Russia chose to renew it. They launched the Tu-160M and Tu-160M2 projects, bringing old airframes into the factory, replacing most of the electronics, radar, and flight controls, and even restarting production with structural parts made using modern techniques. In these upgrades, the cockpit is digitized. Analog gauges are replaced by color displays. Flight control systems are updated. New communication and navigation systems compatible with GLONASS are added. And new data links allow the aircraft to receive target orders and update strike plans while already in the air. The nose radar is swapped for a more reliable model with better detection range and deeper integration with the fire control system. New cruise missile attack profiles are programmed directly into the mission computer, letting the Tu-160 launch waves of KH-101 missiles at multiple targets in a single strike. On the outside, changes are harder to spot. The skin is checked for fatigue, panels in high-stress areas are replaced, wing spars are reinforced, and corroded sections are repaired. The NK-32 engines are upgraded to NK-3202 variants, with better fuel consumption, longer life, and higher reliability. The goal is to push Tu-160 service life into the 2040s and beyond, alongside whatever next-generation bomber Russia manages to field. In terms of weapons, beyond strategic cruise missiles, the Tu-160 can carry conventional bombs and air-to-surface missiles, but Russia rarely uses it as a pure carpet bomber. The preferred strategy is to keep the Tu-160 further back and use it as a strategic long-range strike tool. In Syria and later in Ukraine, Tu-160s appear mainly as cruise missile launch platforms, usually firing from relatively safe airspace over the Caspian Sea or deep inside Russia. For people on the ground, what they see is a rain of low-flying missiles, not the silhouette of a supersonic bomber overhead. In sensors and data, the Tu-160 does not reach B-2 levels, but the Tu-160M brings it to a new standard compared with the original Soviet design. Navigation combines inertial, optical, and satellite inputs. The radar is improved. Long-range communications keep it wired into Russia's strategic command network. Even so, compared with fully network-centric concepts, the Tu-160 is still a relatively closed platform. It receives orders, carries weapons to the launch area, fires, and withdraws, rather than acting as a smart sensor node that shares battlefield data like newer aircraft. Stealth is the obvious weak point. The Tu-160 has a somewhat smaller radar cross-section than the Tu-95, thanks to cleaner surfaces and some shapes. But at its core, it is still a huge block of metal with big intakes, exhausts, wing edges, and tail surfaces that reflect radar strongly. At long standoff distances, it does not need to hide like a B-2 because its main job is launching missiles from far away. But if it is forced to push into modern air defenses, it must rely heavily on speed, clever routing, and electronic jamming support from other platforms. In overall combat capability, the Tu-160 is still impressive in the modern picture. It can carry a large number of missiles and shift quickly between different strategic directions. With just a few aircraft based at airfields pointing toward multiple regions, Russia can create the sense that any area within missile range is at risk. In coordination, the Tu-160 operates inside a strategic ecosystem that includes Tu-95, Tu-22M3, surface ships, submarines with cruise missiles, and airborne and ground command systems, forming a layered long-range strike network. On upgrade potential and service life, the Tu-160 benefits from a relatively young airframe compared with the B-52, and still has room for further electronic modernization. But high operating costs, heavy maintenance demands, and a small fleet make each upgrade round more burdensome than for a large, widely distributed fleet like the B-52. On the other hand, in strategic impact, every time the Tu-160 appears in the news, it is almost always part of a message to the West and NATO about Russia's ability to strike from very long range. And on our 6-point scorecard, the Tu-160 looks like this. Total score, 21 out of 30. The Tu-160 takes the number 3 position in our ranking. Number 2. The B-52 Stratofortress. This bomber has a wingspan of about 56 meters, a length of almost 49 meters, and stands more than 12 meters tall. Maximum takeoff weight is over 220 tons, and it can carry up to around 32 tons of weapons. Combat radius is roughly 14,000 kilometers without refueling, with a service ceiling close to 15,000 meters. 8 jet engines slung under the wings do not push it into supersonic flight, but they keep it cruising at stable subsonic speed for many hours. And most importantly, an airframe born in the 1950s is now being prepared for yet another upgrade cycle to keep flying into the 2050s. The B-52 story begins right after the Second World War, when the United States Air Force wanted a bomber that could hit deep inside enemy territory without relying on forward bases. The first designs were straight-wing, propeller-driven aircraft, which gradually evolved into the B-52, swept wings, and 8 jet engines. In 1952, the B-52 flew for the first time. Just 3 years later, the first aircraft were handed over to Strategic Air Command. During the Cold War, the B-52 was America's long rifle. It sat on nuclear alert, patrolling over the Arctic skies, ready to dash toward strategic targets in the Soviet Union at a moment's notice. A large airframe, huge payload, and very long range made it ideal for carrying heavy nuclear gravity bombs and later long-range nuclear cruise missiles. But the B-52 was not just a deterrent symbol. It quickly went into real wars. Over Vietnam, B-52 carpet bombing left a terrifying mark both on the battlefield and in people's minds. Dozens of tons of bombs dropped from high altitude erased entire areas in a single strike. Later, in the Gulf War, the B-52 returned in a different role. It no longer just dumped unguided bombs. It began to use precision-guided weapons tied into a new targeting network, proving that an aircraft from the 1950s could adapt to modern warfare. In terms of design, the B-52 looks simple, but hides some very smart engineering decisions. The long, slender, swept wings use a so-called flexible wing structure that allows the tips to bend upwards more than 9 meters under load. That reduces stress and makes the aircraft ride smoother in turbulence. 8 engines are hung in pairs under the wings. Engineers like to joke that it is basically 4 fighters hanging under each wing. They provide thrust, and also act as flow control elements that help the wings stay stable at many angles of attack. Not elegant maybe, but brutally effective. The original flight controls were purely mechanical and hydraulic, later augmented with stability and electronic control systems to reduce pilot workload. One interesting detail, the main landing gear can swivel into the crosswind, allowing the B-52 to crab sideways down the runway, while the fuselage stays at an angle to the runway centerline, reducing risk in strong crosswind landings. The real strength of the B-52 is in its weapon bays and wing pylons. In the nuclear role, it once carried gravity bombs, then shifted to long-range nuclear cruise missiles like AGM-86 and AGM-129, allowing it to launch weapons from outside enemy air defenses. In the conventional role, it has carried almost everything: iron bombs, cluster munitions, naval mines, then gradually moved to GPS-guided JDAMs, glide bombs, long-range cruise missiles like JASSM, anti-ship harpoon missiles, electronic decoy MALD, and more. Thanks to the internal weapons bay upgrade to the 1760 standard, the B-52 can carry many guided weapons inside the fuselage, reducing drag, saving fuel, and improving survivability. In recent conflicts, the B-52 has become a long-range target grinder. Over Afghanistan, it flew from American territory or distant bases, carrying precision weapons to hit individual training camps or hardened positions. In Iraq and Syria, it served as long-range fire support, striking depots, command posts, bridges. On a single sortie, one B-52 can carry enough weapons to perform multiple missions in one flight. But the B-52 story does not stop in the Middle East. In recent years, you have seen this name more and more in news about Europe and the Caribbean. Bomber task force deployments to Europe let B-52 crews train with NATO air forces, run cross-theater drills, and fly through complex air defense environments. In Asia, they join presence flights across the Pacific. And recently, as the United States tightens pressure in the Caribbean and around Venezuela, B-52s have appeared in bomber attack demo missions, flying alongside FA-18, B-1, F-35 airborne early warning aircraft, and tankers to send a very clear message about long-range strike capability. To keep a 1950s airframe useful in 2025 campaigns, you must turn it into a flying computer. From the 1960s onward, the B-52 received electronic upgrades: bombing computers, navigation radar, jamming systems. In the 2000s, the Connect program turned the cockpit from a room full of analog dials into a somewhat digital workspace with new mission computers, data links, programmable radios, and the ability to receive target orders and bombing plans during the flight instead of only before takeoff. The internal bomb bay upgrade to the 1760 standard lets the B-52 carry JDAMs, JASSMs, MALDs inside instead of on the wings, increasing the number of smart weapons per jet. Sensor packages like the Lightning Targeting Pod were added, allowing the B-52 to find and strike targets with much higher precision on its own. Next, the B-52 will receive a new active electronically scanned array radar, improved communications, better data links, and most importantly, a new engine set, the F-130. When that happens, it will officially be redesignated B-52J. The new engines will not just save fuel and reduce noise and emissions, they will also extend the B-52's life by many decades. With the old TF-33 engines, supplying spare parts and maintenance has become harder and harder. When the fleet transitions to the F-130, this aircraft will essentially have a new heart, a new radar, new displays, yet keep the familiar airframe. A 20th century legend is being rejuvenated to fly deep into the 21st century. In America's combat network, the B-52 is not a stealthy ghost. It is the visible hammer that everyone sees and no one can ignore. When Washington wants to send a deterrent signal, they send B-52s along coastlines and into Allied airspace, letting adversaries watch the tracks on open flight tracking sites. When firepower is needed, the B-52 offers a long-range weapons truck with a relatively low cost per kilogram of ordnance compared with newer aircraft. And inside the nuclear triad, the B-52 is the platform for nuclear cruise missiles, complementing land-based missiles and ballistic missile submarines. So on our 6-part scorecard, the picture looks like this. Add it all up, and the B-52 scores 24 out of 30. That makes the B-52 Stratofortress the runner-up in our ranking. Number 1. The B-2 Spirit. This monster of a bomber has a wingspan of about 52 meters, a length of 21 meters, and stands more than 5 meters tall. Maximum takeoff weight is around 336 tons. Inside are 4 F-118 engines without afterburner, each with about 17,000 pounds of thrust, pushing this giant flying wing up to around 15,000 meters, cruising at high subsonic speed. Unrefueled range is about 6,000 nautical miles. With aerial refueling, its reach is almost global, limited mainly by how long 2 humans in the cockpit can physically endure. All of its weapons, up to roughly 18 tons of bombs and missiles, fit neatly inside 2 internal bomb bays. From the ground, the B-2 does not look like any other bomber. There is no clear fuselage, no vertical tail, no small side wings. It is just one huge dark gray wing sliding across the sky like a ghost. But what makes it number 1 is not the exotic look. It is the role. This is the aircraft that can blow open the door of almost any air defense system on the first night of a war. The B-2 story begins in the late 1970s and early 80s, when the United States realized that big, high-flying bombers would not survive long against modern long-range air defenses and surface-to-air missiles. The Air Force needed a different weapon, not one that flew faster than radar, but one that almost disappeared from radar. The Advanced Technology Bomber program was born, and Northrop won with an extremely bold design. A tailless, stealthy flying wing. No vertical tail, no separate fuselage, everything blended into one shape. At first, the Air Force planned to buy more than 100 aircraft, preparing for deep penetration missions over the Soviet Union. Then the Cold War ended. Costs climbed into tens of billions of dollars, and Congress started cutting. In the end, only 21 aircraft were completed. 1 crashed in Guam. 1 was badly damaged in a recent incident and may never fully return. So today, only 19 are in active service. A tiny, fragile fleet on paper, but each jet is a national-level asset. To understand why radar almost cannot see the B-2, you have to look at the design philosophy. The whole aircraft is one giant flying wing with smooth, continuous curves and almost no right angles. That is what radar hates the most. When radar waves hit a curved surface, they scatter in many directions instead of bouncing straight back to the antenna. With no vertical tail and no upright surfaces like a traditional aircraft, the side reflection drops dramatically. Even small details like wing edges, bomb bay doors, and landing gear doors are shaped and fitted so that when closed, they merge into the overall curve. Shape is only the first layer. Under the skin is a world of materials and coatings that absorb radar energy. The airframe uses a lot of composite material, light and strong, and tuned to interact with radio waves in specific ways. On the outside, special layers contain tiny metallic elements that convert radar energy into heat and bleed it away. All of that only works if the surface stays clean, sealed, without cracks or peeling. That is why each B-2 lives in its own climate-controlled hangar, and every few years, technicians painstakingly rework panel by panel, seam by seam. One of the things radar engineers hate most is an exposed engine face. Compressor blades and turbines are perfect mirrors. So the B-2 hides all 4 engines deep inside the wing, pulling air through curved ducts so that radar never gets a straight line of sight to the fans. Hot exhaust is mixed with cooler air before it leaves the trailing edge, shrinking the infrared signature. Viewed through thermal cameras or infrared search sensors, the B-2 looks much smaller than any other bomber its size. Aerodynamically, the flying wing layout is a challenge. By nature, it is not stable. Without computers, a pilot could not keep it flying straight for long. On the B-2, the fly-by-wire system is always working, reading data from many sensors, moving control surfaces, spoilers, and speed brakes along the trailing edge to keep the aircraft where it needs to be. Those systems have multiple layers of redundancy and are hardened to handle electromagnetic pulses in a nuclear combat environment, matching the original role as a strategic bomber. In terms of weapons, the B-2 is a stealth hammer aimed at the heart of enemy command and air defense networks. Its 2 internal bomb bays can hold up to about 18 tons, but the key is that everything stays inside. No external stores to ruin the stealth shape. In conventional missions, it can carry dozens of GPS-guided bombs in 500 or 2,000-pound classes, smart cluster munitions, aerial mines, and standoff weapons like JSOW and JASSM. In the nuclear role, the B-2 can carry B-61 and B-83 nuclear bombs, allowing it to strike strategic targets deep inside enemy territory without having to fly the traditional routes of Cold War bombers. And critically, the B-2 is currently the only aircraft that can carry 2 GBU-57 bunker buster bombs, giant penetrators built to destroy deeply buried facilities such as command bunkers or uranium enrichment sites. All of that theory only matters once it is tested in real wars. The B-2 has done that many times. Its first combat missions came over Kosovo in 1999. From a single base in Missouri, B-2s flew more than 30 hours non-stop, halfway around the world, struck high-value targets in Yugoslavia, and then flew back. Out of tens of thousands of coalition sorties, B-2 missions were only a tiny percentage. but they were responsible for a very large share of the highest priority targets destroyed in the opening weeks. Later, in Afghanistan, the B-2 set new endurance records. Some missions lasted more than 40 hours, dropping precision-guided bombs on training camps and command centers of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, then landing at Diego Garcia to swap crews and continue another leg back to the United States. That capability turns the B-2 into a tool Washington can use against almost any point on the map without having to negotiate forward basing rights with many allies. In Iraq, the B-2 was part of the shock phase in the first days of the campaign. It hit command centers, radar sites, communication hubs, and heavily defended targets, opening corridors for less stealthy fighters to move in. Over Libya, B-2s appeared again, striking airfields, hangars, and weapon depots, helping enforce a no-fly zone and choking the opponent's ability to move aircraft. In recent years, the B-2 has continued to take on some of the hardest missions. In Yemen, it carried heavy bunker-busting bombs against underground depots built to survive artillery and regular missile strikes. In the Middle East, its role rose to another level with the strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. In the operation called Midnight Hammer, 7 B-2s launched from Missouri on a 37-hour mission toward deeply buried enrichment sites at Fordow and Natanz. F-35s went ahead to probe and suppress air defenses, but the main act was the B-2 with its GBU-57s. Flight paths, bomb bay timing, and approach angles were all calculated to squeeze every bit of advantage out of its stealth. According to what was later released, the stealth bombers went in and out of Iranian airspace without being hit and without any missile successfully locking on. For air defense officers, that is the kind of nightmare that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning. When images of B-2S launching and returning from that operation were made public, the story stopped being just about engineering. The president praised them as absolutely unbelievable and absolutely invisible, and said that the success of that campaign was one reason he wanted to buy more. In reality, restarting production is extremely difficult with the line closed, but that statement shows something important. After more than 3 decades, the B-2 is still seen as a weapon no other platform can fully replace for the hardest missions. To keep it relevant for modern battlefields, the Air Force has upgraded it constantly. Flight control computers from the 1980s have been replaced by new integrated processors many times faster. Internal data buses have been converted to fiber optics, able to handle the huge information load of modern combat. The active electronically scanned array radar has been upgraded so it can navigate, map targets, avoid weather, and still keep emissions under control. The defensive management system has been rebuilt to better detect ground and airborne threats, helping the aircraft automatically choose safer routes. At the same time, there have been quiet improvements to stealth coatings, heat-resistant materials along the trailing edge where exhaust flows, secure communications, and data links with fighters and airborne command posts. In practice, a B-2 in 2025 is very different inside from a B-2 in the late 1990s, even though the outside shape is almost unchanged. But nothing on the battlefield lasts forever. Extremely high operating costs, a very small fleet, and the arrival of a new generation of stealth bombers have led the Air Force to plan B-2 retirement sometime in the 1930s, giving way to the B-21 with lower cost and larger numbers. Until that day, whenever the United States needs a first strike that goes deep, clean, and into the most heavily defended targets, the first name on the list is still the B-2. If we score the B-2 on the same scale as the rest of this ranking, it almost hits the ceiling. Total score, 26 out of 30. That is why the B-2 Spirit stands at the very top of this list. Next generation stealth bombers. Outside the top 5 we just walked through, there are 2 names that could almost certainly rewrite the entire game. But we have to keep them out of the list for now. The reason is simple. Both are next-generation stealth bombers with insane levels of technology. But neither has spent a single real minute in combat, and most of their specifications are still locked behind classified walls. If what we know so far is even close to the truth, then America's B-21 Raider and China's H-20 could easily fight for the #1 or #2 spot in this ranking. The B-21 Raider is a premier answer to the 21st century. Still built on the stealth flying wing philosophy of the B-2, but designed from day one to survive the layered air defense networks of China and Russia. With low-band radar, infrared sensors, and stealth hunting satellites. It uses an open architecture with modular mission systems. That means software, sensors, and weapons can be swapped and upgraded almost like updating a smartphone without having to rebuild the entire aircraft like older generations. The airframe is more compact than the B-2, but optimized for stealth. Equipped with an active electronically scanned radar, real-time data links, artificial intelligence to support the crew, and the ability to carry both nuclear weapons and smart long-range strike systems. Strategically, the B-21 is meant to be a central pillar of America's nuclear triad for the next half-century, the deep strike hammer that pushes into the densest anti-access zones on the planet. On the other side, Xi'an H-20 is China's very ambitious answer to the B-2 and B-21. We have not seen it perform a full public flight display, and most of what we know comes from renders, mock-ups, and carefully managed leaks. But if the estimates about intercontinental range, heavy payload, and stealth flying wing design are accurate, this could be the first bomber that lets the Chinese Air Force strike targets in Guam, Hawaii, or beyond from within Chinese territory. The weapons might include stealthy cruise missiles, hypersonic weapons, or long-range anti-ship missiles, tied into Beijing's network of sensors and reconnaissance satellites. H-20 is not just an airplane. It is a symbol of China's intent to field a strategic bombing capability in the Pacific that rivals the United States. If one day the B-21 goes into real combat, or the H-20 appears in a crisis over Taiwan or the South China Sea, our ranking of the 5 most dangerous strategic bombers on Earth may have to be rewritten from scratch. But until we have real data, real missions, and real combat performance, these 2 names will stay outside the list, like shadows moving closer to the future of war. So the question is, for you, who owns the future of the skies? The battle-tested legends like the B-52 and the B-2, the new generation like the B-21 and the H-20, or some completely different platform we have not even seen yet. If you want to keep watching how these machines shift the global balance of power, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next deep dive. This is Future War Tech. See you in the next episode.